Welcome to Pop Screen, the only podcast sponsored by the American Dairy Association. We are that corner of the Geek Show that likes to look at the good, the bad, and the preposterous of movies either starring, about, or by pop stars. No, the podcast covers a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker and artist who also writes regularly for the Geek Show and Byline Times, and I've been joined this week by...
I'm Mark Harrison. I write and occasional quizmaster for Film Stories magazine and online. And if this podcast doesn't sell milk, I don't know what will.
Yes, we're doing a bit of a hostage to fortune here, quite wisely doing something risky for our first episode back after a break, which is we're recording in advance something that will lightly touch on Donald Trump. The next fortnight could bring anything. We have no idea what world this podcast will be released into.
Well, I'm glad he's okay. We're not going to say anything that might age poorly or otherwise. No. We also need to avoid Victor Willis's wife, who apparently handles all of his legal matters. And we'll get into this later. But he. In a statement in December 2024, said that he was going to sue each and every news organization that referred to YMCA as a gay anthem. So we might be in trouble here, Graham. Just saying. Throughout the course of this film.
Come on, man. I think all of this cultural study shit aside, I don't think there's anything in this film that can be read as anything other than robustly heterosexual.
That's weirdly true, strangely true, even that they just sort of the subject today, listeners, if you haven't already clicked, is the massively no homo Village People musical "Can't Stop the Music" from 1980, and it's the worst film I'll ever watch twice because we've decided to see this episode. So I had to rewatch it.
Yes,
whose idea was this again? Was this me or you?
I think this was me. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's all right because it's genuinely going to be interesting to talk about. I think as much as not so much about the film itself is actually that interesting. It's just its place and the band's place in American pop culture and where we are right now. There's a lot more to talk about than I thought there would be. But on the film in particular, I have notes. All right, I have some notes on this film.
I think maybe one way we could start is just to describe, because like the disco movement in general, this is something that's had many changing reputations over the years, more reputations than Taylor Swift has, because she hasn't got that Taylor's version out yet. But at the time, when it was released in 1980, this was not just a massive flop, but a flop so big that it inspired the creation of the Razzies.
Yep, you've jumped straight in there. I was going to bury the lead a little bit with that one. So, yeah, it's a cute bit of trivia that, obviously the Village People are in it, and Steve Guttenberg and a pre-transition Caitlyn Jenner are all in this. But for Valerie Perrin's role, they wanted Olivia Newton-John to play that character. And I mentioned this because she eventually turned it down over disagreements about what her songs would be and which of her songs could be in the film to go and be in Xanadu. And John J.B. Wilson, the founder of the Golden Raspberry Awards, caught a double feature of this and Xanadu.
Wow.
In 1980. And apparently it's what inspired the start of the Golden Raspberry Awards. This was the first recipient of Worst Picture. And other than as a trivia point, I don't like to dignify the Golden Raspberries with coverage because it's just a mean kid thing. But it is worth mentioning as trivia points. But 2 points to mention. Firstly, that Jenner only acted. This was Jenner's first film and Jenner's only other film. 2011's Jack and Jill also won Worst Picture at the Raspberries, so that's a 0-for-2 record for acting there. And second, the Golden Raspberries in general is so much performative white guy anger. It's just oh, this film made me. Oh, this film was so shit. I'm going to give it an award.
It's not aimed at me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is we're not what we're going to aim to get into with this because there's little point in hating on it, but I think discussing it as an anthropological study of this mad fucking film is worthwhile doing. So, and it's pop screen material up and down, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. I wanted to bring the Golden Raspberries up first because I think that initial reaction is kind of the least interesting thing about it. It's the baseline if you want to talk about Can't Stop the Music, because its status as a much mocked ultra flop is less to do with the film, although as we've indicated, the film is no great shakes, but it's more to do with the cultural status that disco had at that time, which was that it was the subject of a massive backlash. There was a massive sort of book burning style ceremony where people destroyed their disco records in like a sort of a not a great look ceremony in a sports stadium.
I've got the details of this. This was called Disco Demolition Night. It was the whole Disco Sucks backlash, started by a rock radio DJ called Steve Dahl, and primarily picking up angry young white men who took disco records to a doubleheader baseball game in order to get discounted admission because they said, between games they were going to blow up, they were going to explode the vinyl. Yeah. And this was at Comiskey Park in Chicago in 1979, and it was followed by a riot. Like riot police had to come and break it all up. Thousands of people stormed the pitch after the whole disco explosion thing happened, and it's like it's the sort of thing that happened before we had the internet, I guess, and now just happens more now that we have the internet. But it's just that
it happens more, but at least they're shouting into the void rather than actually starting riots, mostly.
Yeah, and in the course of researching this, I found a Reddit thread that someone did from a year ago asking whether or not the Disco Demolition Night had a modern equivalent in the way that people are now being much less positive about Marvel movies than they used to be. Like, is this anything like Disco Sucks? Like, is it anything like Disco Sucks? Is it anything like Disco Sucks? The angry white man movement that was pissed off that gay, black, and Latin music was on the radio more than their bands. And so they went and started a riot and blew up a load of vinyl. Is it anything like that? No. Have you seen The Marvels? Have you seen Secret Invasion? Shut the fuck up. Anyway.
Now, as Mark has obviously touched on the resentment underpinning a lot of the disco demolition derby, Nile Rodgers, who now has not, it seems diminishing to say that Nile Rodgers' career has outlived the disco backlash. He's an absolute legend, one of the most iconic musicians and producers of the 20th and 21st centuries. And he has always been very outspoken that, people hated disco because it was too black, too queer, not macho enough. And while the Village People were a multiracial band, they were also not a gay band. So I don't understand why they were ever in the crosshairs of this.
Yeah, it's weird. Some of them were gay, some weren't, and it's a multiracial band. And as you said, it should be mentioned that obviously, Nile Rodgers has legendary status, and there is a difference between Nile Rodgers and what the Village People are doing as disco, which is essentially just not the One Direction, but they're the manufactured band of disco.
They're the Monkeys, right? They're the Monkeys, the Chic's Beatles of disco.
Yeah, thank you. I went more recent, but you have it does. It wasn't. They weren't the first ones, but they're the ones out of disco, and you've got this kind of the brainchild of a French composer called Jacques Morali, is it?
Morali, yes.
Morali, yes. Jacques Morali, who comes over to New York with his business partner to try and make music over here and to make music over in New York City, and teams up with Victor Willis, who's the original frontman of the band, and they kind of come up with this rotating lineup of village people. They're all in the stereotyped costumes and they all go to clubs to perform and whatnot. And when it comes down to eventually they're getting TV attention or record company attention, they basically went, we need a permanent lineup. So they put out the legendary ad. Macho types wanted must dance and have a mustache in order to find the actual permanent lineup of the band that would feature on, from there on.
Yes. You've skipped over, I think, my favourite bit of the Village People's Foundation, which I discovered in Darren Bullock's book, David Bowie Made Me Gay, 100 Years of LGBT Music, which generously covers the Village People, despite them not being a gay band. And it says that Jacques Morali had just moved to New York from Paris. And he was like walking around Greenwich Village just looking for people who seemed interesting, like desperately trying to find connections. And he saw Philippe Rose, who went on to become the Native American in the Village People. He didn't just see Philippe Rose, he saw Philippe Rose wandering around in the costume that he wears in the Village People, in like full native headdress and everything. Which, I mocked Can't Stop the Music for introducing Rose just in full costume when I first saw it. I thought that was ridiculous. But no, apparently that's a moment of documentary realism in this movie.
Yeah, the two things about that is that like that's one of the few accurate things, is that the sort of thing that inspires it is Philippe Rose dressed as in his Native American headdress. At one point says I'm going to go change, and then the next scene is just wearing a different headdress. It's just like that sort of thing. But like so the weird thing about this as a film is that it's made it's reportedly an origin story for the Village People, but it's set when it came out. It's set in 1980, and everyone's talking about the 70s are over. This is the sound of the 80s. Like, they never said disco. They said this, specifically this. Steve Guttenberg as Jack Morrill, the Americanized version of Jacques Morali, who has all these amazing songs. He just needs a band to do. And it's sort of set now. But then there's the thing about Philippe Rose being the first person they see do it. That's one thing. The other thing, which is, obviously more fictionalized for this, is that you kind of see Valerie Perrin's character picking up the band, as she's out and about. And they're all, as you said, it's a very ungay portrayal of, the Village People. They're all very straight guys who just happen to already be dressed like their stereotypes. Like Randy Jones is already dressed up as a cowboy. David Hodo is already dressed as a construction worker because he's doing a modeling shoot / music video. I'm not sure what the hell he's meant to be doing in that thing. Can't tell with musical rules. Ray Simpson is a former member of a singing cop group called the Cop Outs. And they're just all these guys that were just conscripted into the gay Avengers, like, while wandering around Greenwich Village. And that's apparently the real true story of how the Village People got pulled together.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about Sam, because in a movie where someone is just casually wandering around their shared flat in full Native American headdress, she is probably the strangest character in the whole damn thing. As you say, she is very good friends with all of the Village People by the midpoint of the movie, and all of the Village People are portrayed as being, just perfectly ordinary guys with a slightly way out dress sense. Nothing gay about them. Famously not a gay band. But there's this odd fixation with putting Sam into quite sort of suggestive situations with the Village People, which are also completely innocent. In the YMCA scene, there's loads of hard buns in the showers, but there's also a scene, and this is a PG, I think, where Sam is like topless in a jacuzzi with all the Village People, and they're just having fun, splashing foam at each other. And it's like, if I was trying to sell the Village People as a nice bunch of heterosexual lads to middle America, I think having them completely ignore a beautiful naked woman in front of them would be quite low on the list of strategies.
Yeah, we've jumped straight into this, but the YMCA scene, like this is a PG film that fully has buns and willies and Miss Teschmachers out in the in the hot tub. It's like, it dives straight into it. The YMCA thing is unabashedly that, and apparently, just I guess the rating spots just didn't notice and just went, yeah, sorry, PG. Just put
Yeah,
it through.
it does make me wonder how much other 1970s gay erotica we could have got through the censors
It,
if they just ignored
it
parts of it.
it makes me wonder if they got to the end of the movie, which is a real possibility when you're watching this film, because it is for no earthly reason really slowly paced. Like it's no reason for it to be 2 hours long. But yeah, you mentioned
Yeah.
Valerie Perrin. She's kind of the protagonist in this, really, as much as you've got like a kind of pre-Gutenberg, like sort of meek,
Before the
squirrely, hyper.
Stonecutters.
Yeah, before the Stonecutters got to him, before the
Yeah.
Stonecutters bankrolled Police Academy. Yeah, you've got this character in the midst of this, puts the village people together. She's more or less the driving force. She doesn't come up with the name, but she co-signs on the name when someone just says it's the way they do in music biopics. I thought that was a nice throw forward to, Walk the Line and Bohemian Rhapsody and that sort of film.
Yeah.
That was at least there. But this character is a former model who is kind of like trying to break out, and you've got the Jenner character who's called Ron White, and he's like this square. It's just. He's a terrible character. He never clicks all the way through in this sort of like romance that he has with her. That's like, if you stop treating her like she's a slut, or a fag hag, to use that, if you stop treating her like that, then she might like you more. But like her all the way through is her whole character is like, I've done that and I want to be taken seriously. And she complains at one point of like the casting couch routine. And Steve Gutenberg just proclaims, like, while she's saying, like, oh, I have to swallow my pride a bit. And he has the line, it's one of these typical single entendre lines for this film. Anyone who could swallow 2 snowballs and a ding dong shouldn't have any trouble with pride, is the line. But she's, it's all over the place.
There's 2 things that I want to pick out there. Firstly, I hadn't noticed until you said the full name of the character, but Caitlyn Jenner's uptight straight guy character has a name that is just 2 letters away from the guy who killed Harvey Milk. Which, Dan Weiss that was. Yeah, fucking hell. Maybe intentional, who knows. But yeah, I do find like Sam a weirdly depressing character, and I think it's the one bit in it that's a window for all the film wants to be like squeaky clean fun with full frontal nudity in the YMCA. I think the one window you get into just how deranged and sleazy and coked up the kind of mindset behind this is the character of Sam, because her whole agency is tied to men that she's dating. When it's going well, she will say, I've been dating and romancing industry figures. When it goes badly, she says, oh, he tried the old casting couch routine. And as you say, Steve Gutenberg's all like, oh, well, who cares? Get on there, open your legs. And it's the one note in this otherwise childlike and silly film that I found sort of bleak.
Yeah, I mean, childlike is, as I say, with all the full frontal nudity and all the single entendre stuff, childlike is how I would describe it. Yeah, it's like, I don't think squeaky clean would be, though. I think it's the thing that there's this odd insistence all the way through. The people after the songs like this band is sexy. It's like, are they? It's like, are they in the way that you think that they're sexy? It's and it's like it's
girls
the thing of
all over America with the Leatherman pin up on their wall. Yeah,
it's the thing of bad camp. Yeah, it's the thing of like not really having any control of tone or anything. I think in this is I'm glad you mentioned the Leatherman, though, who, by the way, as a complete contrast to Jenner, is great in this. Like, watching it again, I completely forgot about. It's Glenn Hughes who's the Leatherman. I completely forgot about the bit where they have the standard, you start first seeing Mel Brooks as the producers, where they have the terrible interview sequence, sort of thing, audition sequence, and now it's everywhere because X Factor and stuff. You get these montages of things, but you get this thing where they're looking for more members of the band, and Glenn Hughes comes in just just for starters, like among everyone else who's auditioning, they just assume he's there to audition. He's like, because they're in a government office, he's like, no, I've come for an extension on my income tax. It's like, no, we're looking for singers. So he decides to jump on a piano and sing Danny Boy.
Yes.
And then,
Yeah.
and then chucks a can of Dr. Pepper before the high notes because Dr. Pepper had a product placement deal with Alan Carr, not that one, the producer of this film, who we'll come to later on.
We'll
but,
get on to Alan
but
Carr.
all of the Leatherman stuff is really funny. There's like a bit later on where they're about to go on stage and he's just telling himself, Leatherman, don't get nervous. Leatherman, don't get nervous. And he's genuinely funny. If anyone's missed their calling and actually being a comedy actor, as opposed to everyone else in this fucking painfully unfunny film, then it's Glenn Hughes.
Yes, we should talk about Alan Carr. I think maybe we should hop on to him because he is a huge part of why this film exists. If Jacques Morales is the musical impresario who's making this all happen, then it is quite possible that the Village People would never have got to the big screen without. I would say Alan Carr is a pretty unique character in Hollywood in terms of his taste. Yeah, I'll go with that. That's how I'll say it.
Yeah, I have all of this lined up. I'm ready to go if you want to talk about Alan Carr a bit.
Go for it.
Okay, so this was announced when it had the title as when it was originally announced, it was going to be called Disco Land, where the music never ends. And they obviously changed, made the decision to change that after the disco demolition. Now it's fuck them, but it's billed as Singing in the Rain for the disco crowd. And it kind of comes out of Associated Film Distribution, which is this company set up in the 70s by ITC Entertainment and EMI Films to distribute their films in the US. And this film, and among other flops, was one of the many reasons it just like fucked off and like didn't go well. With Associated Film Distribution, they gave Alan Carr, who had just had like a big hit with Grease, like an enormous hit with Grease, gave him a 3-picture deal. Like, so the slate was going to be this was the first one, Can't Stop the Music, then the Josephine Baker story starring Diana Ross, which you could cover on Pop Screen if it had ever got made, because it just eventually got made as an HBO TV movie in 1991 starring Lynn Whitfield. And the other thing he was going to do was adapt Chicago, which at that point hadn't had the revival that led into it actually getting made into an Oscar-winning movie. But you've got Alan Carr coming with huge confidence into this movie about the Village People in the late 70s, like, oh yeah, they're going to continue in the 80s. And I've just got some select quotes from Carr that I think are kind of incredible and speak to the sort of the as you say, the coked up hubris of all this. Of Caitlyn Jenner, he claimed, Jenner is going to be the Robert Redford of the 80s. And this film will do for Valerie what Carnal Knowledge did for Anne Margaret. So, like, that was the, and also he claimed that, there was huge need for new stars, because you're saying, like, Robert Redford's getting old, Ryan O'Neill's getting old, Warren Beatty's getting old. This is the film that will launch 1,000 ships, like 1,000 stars, and all this. So, and after the disco demolition thing, and, the Village People just fell off in popularity there. The other quote that I've put out here is when someone asked, like, "God, how's your Village People film going to do?" He said, "They'll still be hot. If not, I will resurrect them." Which just didn't pan out. So this obviously bombed. That I would have saved this till the end, really, but it bombed. Did not make. It cost. Hang on, I had the cost. It cost something like 20 million and made something like 2 million. But after this, Carr was already set up to make Grease 2, even if those other 2 pictures went away. Grease 2 considered a failure compared to the first one, but made more in its opening weekend than Can't Stop the Music did in total. And Carr's kind of reputation as a producer and marketing impresario kind of was found dead in a ditch after the 1989 Oscars, which has this have you read about this before? Have you seen any of the stuff from it? Because you won't have seen things because they don't. They have all those nostalgia clips on the Academy YouTube channel. Not so much for this. This was, like Alan Carr's kind of producing ideas, like contributions to like No Horse, which is kind of a good idea. You just have duos of people presenting the awards. They've done versions of that before and could go back to that. That would be nice. He also changed the announcement to "and the Oscar goes to," rather than "and the winner is." That's stuck. That's like an iconic catchphrase now. But it's more notorious for starting with an old Hollywood throwback number that got the Academy sued by Disney for using Snow White who featured played by the actress Eileen Bowman, trying to do crowd work with all the celebrities in costume, and then coming back to the stage with Rob Lowe for a 12-minute duet of Proud Mary, which was the opening sequence of the 1989 Oscars ceremony. Like the LA Times, in the week afterwards, has dedicated its entire letters section to hate mail about this Oscars telecast, and that about wrapped it up. And that about wrapped it up for Carr's reputation, really. Coke adults, that's all I had to say. That's Coke adults, the term.
Yeah, it was famous as the worst Oscars ceremony until Anne Hathaway and James Franco did it. And there is something in it that I think ties back to Can't Stop the Music, which is that Alan Carr got the idea for this opening number when he was at like a sort of gay nightclub in New York, and he saw this kind of drag parody of Snow White. And it's the mindset that thinks in 1989, Ronald Reagan has just left office. The mindset that thinks, yes, this gay drag show is exactly what middle America will love, that leads to you making a movie like Can't Stop the Music. It leads to you being the guy who makes the No Homo Village People movie.
It's I keep wanting to say it's mad, but it's not mad. It's so weirdly slow and pedestrian, and whenever it occasionally like threatens to come to life, like Jenner's character is introduced getting mugged by a little old lady, and it's the funniest thing that happens involving that character all the way through, because Jenner has no comic timing. Like, they keep giving Ron physical comedy to do, and the dialogue is all really terrible as well. And at that point, Caitlyn Jenner's known as a record-breaking Olympian and not an actor, and still known as not an actor, I would say, based on the two Razzie Award-winning movies. But it's just a dead weight in this film that's hardly flying as it is. It's
there is one particular line delivery that Caitlyn Jenner has that I just noted down as being like the flattest thing I've heard in my life, which is just after they do Liberation in the recording studio. And that's meant to be Ron's real turnaround moment. That's meant to be the point where he stops seeing these guys as freaks who are hanging around with his girlfriend and really digs the music, man. And he goes, these guys can sing. It's like, could you sound any less enthusiastic about that, please? Could you sound any less like a guy who has just got text message alert saying a member of their family has just died?
Just got it, print this one. Moving on. That's what
I think it's a full-on Mr. Burns style. We did 20 takes, and that was the best one situation.
Yeah, maybe could be. Yeah, the supporting casts that are in this. It's just like, you've got Tammy Grimes as Sydney, as Sam's agent, who keeps trying to get to do the milk advert. We'll get to the milk advert, but just as this sort of pre-BB from Frasier agent, sort of like vamping around. It just feels like whenever she comes in, feels like she's coming from a different film. When they're having that backyard party where it's the first of umpteen times they're all eating lasagna. Like, they eat enough lasagna in this film to choke Garfield, and it's one of these weird things that this was the easiest thing to make for the continuity. What was it? And you've also got like Marilyn Sokol as Lulu, who sort of lies around just flirting as someone to flirt with and be flirted with by the No Homo Village people. And the absolutely insane line that she says about Philippe Rose, and while listening after his top off, she just kind of goes, "You tell him I'll make up for all the indignities they suffered in Roots." And it's like, what? Like, childlike is it? Because it does feel like it was maybe written by like a couple of children in a trench coat, like pretended to be it's adult screenwriters instead of written. I think I had the list up. Never mind. I think it's Bronte Woodward is the co-writer, but it's co-written by Alan Carr and Bronte Woodward, who worked on Grease as well. And it's just, what?
Bronte Woodward is not the most talented writer with Bronte in their name, I would say. I think there are a few that are above them. Yeah, Madeline So-Call's character Lulu is fantastic because she is pitched as the vamp character in a movie that is both incredibly horny and incredibly sexless, which is just an impossible mark to hit. And there is another one of those "how is this PG" moments where, like, Steve Guttenberg is, as Jack is really stressed out at one point, and she just offers him a spliff. And I assume this gets through as a PG because he's immediately like, you're giving me drugs? Someone involved in the disco scene? And you're giving me drugs? How dare you?
If it wasn't a PG, it wouldn't feel so much like they'll get away with something because this is, as we said, so pedestrian. It's just one of those wacky, like, fine, PG. And you can only assume it's been, I don't know where it's at with the BBFC, but like it must have been reclassified when they've released it on DVD later down the line or something. But yeah, it's mad. The one other thing on Valerie Perrin, do you know why her performance is so weird in this?
No.
So this is the only film directed by Nancy Walker, who was an actor on the Mary Tyler Moore Show and on Rhoda, and also directed episodes of those shows. She also had a 3-picture deal, 3 pictures to direct, and she was bought out of the contract more or less after this bombed. She never directed again, but she really did not get on with Valerie Perrin. And essentially, as by most of her scenes in the film are directed by the director of photography instead. Most of Valerie Perrin's scenes. So that's why she's a little bit remote from everything. She's not getting direction would be the most charitable way to say it. But yeah, it's very odd, isn't it? Other little bit of amazing trivia that's just under this in my notes. And you mentioned James Franco earlier on already, and there's sort of a tenuous James Franco connection. Do you know what was filming at the same time as Can't Stop the Music? Like sort of next door almost, filming in New York at the same time as this movie?
I'm getting a little bell ringing in the back of my head. Was it Times Square?
It was not. It was William Friedkin's Cruising. And Graham, do you know what the name of the Village People's third studio album is?
It's Cruising, yeah.
It's Cruising. So, while there were protests against the Friedkin film, and people were sort of like trying to halt the production, what kept happening is that protesters kept getting the two films mixed up. So they kept crashing the set of Can't Stop the Music and interrupting its location shooting when they were in for Cruising. I'm guessing because there's an album called Cruising, which YMCA was on. And I mentioned the James Franco connection. It's not something for me to question anybody's art, but why did Franco bother with that film Interior Leather Bar that's about like reconstructing 40 minutes of lost and deleted footage from Cruising? But we don't yet have like a screwball comedy about the making of these two movies, these two very different movies in such close proximity, just crashing into each other in New York in the 70s. Like,
you're right, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's still time.
Yeah. So we've sort of touched on the Village People's recording career a bit there. I mean, this has YMCA in, which is an easy hit. You know, anything with that song in, you've got to include it in a Village People movie. The other musical numbers are roughly at the level you'd expect for songs that we're meant to believe are being composed by Steve Guttenberg.
There is that, isn't there? But you know, where really only is he's sort of got his mum as this hype man all the way through. Yeah. She's just chasing him around going, "My son is a genius." So that's like her running joke, showing corporate thinking sucks and all that sort of stuff. It's odd the Village People songs that aren't in this though. Like, you know, 3 of the biggest hits are In the Navy, Macho Man, and San Francisco. And
Go West. Although I think that hadn't been released at this point. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe not. I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure of the chronology of that, but yeah, that's not in either. But yeah, so the songs we do get, we get in order. We get "I Love You to Death," which is the construction worker music video shoot. We get Magic Night,
a blatant knockoff of Hot Stuff as well.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. We get Magic Night, which could, it could be interchangeable with any number of lyrics. This is the thing, isn't it, with the Village People? It's with Morales' music. It's just like it's catchy tunes and simple, learnable, sing-alongable lyrics. So Magic Night's there. YMCA, we've covered. Somehow a PG movie with full nudity in the changing room. and the baths and the gym. You get Liberation in the recording studio, where the record producer they've been caught in rightly trusts his intuition, says this is not the sound of the 80s. The most pressing thing you can get. You get Milkshake, which I said we'd get to, which is Samantha's 4-minute milk advert, where she tells some kids if they drink their milk, they'll grow up to be the village people. And for some reason, the advertisers reject the premise. And everyone's a little bit confounded about this. This is what I mean, and the thing of the insistence on it being sexy. Someone right after that is going, it might be Gutenberg's mum, so maybe that's the gag. But I wrote down the lines. I didn't keep track of who said it, but it was the most glamorous and sexy commercial I've ever seen. It's like, is it? Is it really? So it's the Milkshake song, and then they end on Can't Stop the Music.
Can't Stop the Music. We should mention something that I think all of our listeners will be ahead of us on, that if you are releasing a film which looks like it might well get a negative critical reception for factors both within and beyond its control, calling it Can't Stop the Music is really the biggest gift you can give a reviewer.
Stop the music! Stop! Yeah, it is, as the song that closes the film, the song that stops the music, funnily enough. So yeah, why not? Shove it in there. There's yeah, but you kind of I don't know about I'm not sure about Go West, but in the chronology of things, Can't Stop the Music, I know, was the last UK top 40 hits for the Village People. Because that was their last appearance on Top of the Pops. When you go back through, this will probably pop up on like BBC 4 if you go through at some point. But there is a thing of them performing Can't Stop the Music, and the hosts that week are Tommy Vance and Roger Daltrey.
Oh, yeah, the ideal target audience for the Village people.
And the patter before is like, "Oh, what do you think of disco, Roger?" And he's like, more or less, I fucking hate it. I try to play football with my mates and be in bands. Like, I just want to bands, the Oasis thing. Anyway, it's just kind of like, so he's like, obviously, like, so then Vance introduces them, and before it crashes in, because Roger Daltrey's a clever cunt, he just pipes up with like, "Watch your backs" before the music starts, and it's like, fuck's sake. I mean, that's just how shitty it was, but at the turn of the 80s. But yeah, it's
surprising considering that this is the sound of the 80s. But yes.
Well, it's also Roger Daltrey hosted Top of the Pops, and as I say, just instead of being like a fucking 30, 40-something-year-old man, just kind of being like a naughty kid who's got older, a microphone starts going, "Hello, my name is Mr. Pooh," that kind of shit. All this dreadful spell of music stars being TV presenters that Top of the Pops insisted on doing.
Yes. Well, we've promised a bit on the Milkshake number so much that I feel we have to talk about it. It is obviously a scene I remember from my first viewing of it, but I'd forgotten how absolutely central the American Dairy Association is to the whole plot.
It'll be the same as with the Dr. Pepper consideration. Like, Alan Carr will have made some deal or other for promotional consideration.
Yes, that'll be it. Yeah,
you'd imagine.
Yeah,
but the song itself is like, again, I'm not sure the chronology, but did they write a milk song for this? Because it's not really like, for an advert about milk, it's like, all right, you take some ice cream and you take some other stuff. So it's like, right, hang on, this isn't just about milk. This is about the part work for the milkshake. And they say it's really easy, and it's not. But it's it's weird sort of ChatGPT milkshake recipe lyrics that they put on. and a glorious all-white version of the clothes that they normally wear.
Yes. Yeah, I think as dance pop bangers about Milkshake go, Khalees set the bar a little bit higher than this.
She's safe. This isn't bringing anybody to the yard.
No. But it is very odd, and it's one of those examples, I guess, of Carr's inability to judge which level of parody it should be on. It seems to have this... It has this assumption that Well, it's not an assumption, is it? The American Dairy Association is presented as being this kind of glamorous megacorp that everyone wants to get in on. And it's obviously meant to be parody and it's obviously meant to be tongue in cheek. But at the same time, so much of the third act hinges on this fucking milk commercial.
Yeah, it's just finance, isn't it? That's it. It's all very. I think there's a lot to be. I mean, as much as we talked about YMCA already in its place in this film, I think there's a lot to be said about the commercialism of this, as much as there's certain things about it that have just quite coincidentally become generational things as far as the village people, like long beyond, because they disband after this film comes out and bombs, and the next couple of albums don't do well. They disband as an act in 1985, I think, but they've come back together by 1987 as an act that events bookings like weddings, and apparently quite a lot of bar mitzvahs. I came across this in my research while I was looking at this. I'm trying to find the notes. Sorry. That apparently it was a big booking. There's like they were huge at bar mitzvahs more or less. And Roger Bennett, one of the authors of the book Bar Mitzvah Disco, said not one of the village people is Jewish, but they did play a critical function, providing a slew of new role models for Jewish youth. We were under such pressure to become bankers, accountants, and lawyers, and they opened our eyes to other career possibilities: a cop, a builder, a flamboyant Indian.
A leather man?
Yeah, that's right. Well, he works at the toll booth. He works at the New Jersey toll booth. He's got a job and he sings Danny Boy. And he's the funniest one in it. Leave him alone, Graham. Anyway, it's a job, all right? Let them and don't get nervous. Anyway, but that's another component I never thought of it. Like, obviously, I didn't realize they were so big with the Jewish community, but it's the thing of like why it appeals to kids, in the thing when pop really had to seriously consider kids as an audience. Not so much as it does now, where it's all just sad bangers and songs about sex, etc. I sounded 50 years old there, but you know what I mean. It's like it's the thing of like the way that kids they're dressing up the way kids dress up as well. Is the other thing, or rather, the kids dressing up not the way they dress up. But it's the thing of like it appeal to kids in that way of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And one of the village people is the obvious answer. No, it's but the thing of this whole thing about the so the whole thing about the dance to YMCA, the whole thing about the doing the semaphore style letters.
Yeah,
like there are various stories about where this comes from, and while the one I'm about to go with, the one that I've seen the most about, sounds a little bit apocryphal or embellished, I prefer it to any of the versions where someone says, I came up with that and I should have trademarked it. There's a guy who, because this became like a big sports anthem, there was a thing, I've been reading that like became a thing in like New York Yankees Stadium in 1996. So this thing where they'll play the song in between innings, not innings, whatever it is, baseball. And the groundskeepers would start doing the dance. The crowd would like cheer along and stuff. And there was like one of the co-owners of the New York Yankees in an interview said, "Oh, I should have trademarked that." So what the fuck are you talking about? Like, did you invent the YMCA dance in 1996, you daft bastard? Anyway, the story, the official version, as far as I'm concerned, this is a version that Victor Willis and all people tell, is that they got booked on American Bandstand, which is very much not any American equivalent of Top of the Pops is going to be better than Top of the Pops. But basically, because they've got an audience of kids, they would get to the chorus and they would clap their hands above their head when they got to the chorus. And basically, in between like rehearsal and broadcast, they showed them the video of the audience, and all the kids did that and thought they were doing the letter Y, so they went to the letter M. And the kids did it, and they just sort of integrated it into the thing. And it's just an accidental thing, and I think that's fucking brilliant. It's just a thing of like, it's just something that daft kids did. Because you see that and you think, why? It's like, and wouldn't it be nice if that was the true story? Just an endlessly imitable thing. It's just that, obviously, from everything to, there's a Minions movie where the Minions are all covering YMCA. And, for everyone else, that Peter Kay routine is one of the funniest things I've ever seen him do in stand-up. That he doesn't say anything. There's no actual joke in it. It's just that the music intro starts playing. He's turning around with a huge grin on his face, like a granddad going up to the dance floor. And it's all just recognizable scenes. It's one of these things that's passed down in such a way. It's just had such a weird like second life, whether it's as a sports anthem or as boomer discos led to kids discos. Just an imitable dance.
Yeah, 100%. But the village people's afterlife not just in the sort of quasi folk culture way that we've been talking about there, but the village people's life as an actual touring entity has been a bit weirder, hasn't it? I mean, until the recent inauguration, and I imagine most people were unaware that there'd been a sort of Beach Boys slash dollar style sort of struggle for the soul of the village people with the original members.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption as far as the Donald Trump of it all is that he was fucking about. I don't know if this comes up in. I don't know if in The Apprentice, the Sebastian Stan film from last year. I don't know if there's a bit where YMCA plays, but if he's around New York in the 70s, I assume that's probably what it comes out of, and it's just his weird fascination with that song.
Yeah, I
As far
don't
as
remember it, but it's very easy to imagine Donald Trump as being because he went to Studio 54, as bleak as
yeah,
that is now. That is, he was there when it happened.
yeah, that's it's kind of again that's what he's doing, that sort of thing. So this sort of starts like when he's running for re-election in 2020. That for whatever reason, as a show of sorry, to skip back earlier, I should skip earlier in 2020 because apparently I do know how this came up to him at least. So basically, in March 2020, the Library of Congress, archived YMCA is like culturally significant and all that kind of thing. So that's a landmark. That's something where it's inarguable that the song is now part of the mainstream and that it's been to some extent co-opted in American pop culture. Of course, when lockdown started going, you have lockdown rallies and this sort of stuff happening. You have people reportedly playing YMCA on speakers and their trucks and cars and whatever while they're out and about. And this filters its way up to eventually the first thing of the first weird glimmers of people going, what the fuck? Why is Donald Trump playing YMCA? Its rallies and dancing to it. But the thing is, he's not, I just talked about the endlessly imitable dance, the really famous, everybody knows it YMCA dance. It's just doing that sort of fucking T-Rex armed shit dance thing, wobbling his fucking hips around. And what the, I mean, I'll tell you one thing. I'm really glad that he hasn't co-opted the dance because, as I said, that's universal. It's not something that in another generation's time one of Elon Musk's innumerable offspring will be claiming, oh no, I wasn't doing the YMCA dance, it was a Roman salute. It's not one of these things. It's not one of these things that's going to be as fucking as fucking pilloried as the Sea Kyle when if and when we somehow get out of all this. But the mad thing is, so like in 2020, that starts happening at his rallies and things. And I'd never seen this video before, but it's fucking chilling. Like after the the failed insurrection attempt and all that nonsense, you've got Trump giving his speech before he fucks off to Florida, and he says again, chilling now because it's kind of like, have a great life, we'll see you soon, he says, and then goes, and they just start the thumping like the drum bits before they normally cut it down to the thumping drums for a while as he's going off towards the plane, and it's weirdly chilling now, and it's weird to think that it's real. Like you look at the clip and go, no, someone's just dumped that over, like, wouldn't it be funny? Like, nope, just played YMCA, and at this point, Victor Willis, who had left the band, I don't think we mentioned, left the band for various reasons, in the run up to the making of Can't Stop the Music.
Yeah.
And has come back in like later lineups and stuff, and is now kind of the spokesman. This thing of him, this interview with him on BBC News, hilariously dressed as the cop while he's on his Zoom interview on BBC News, talking about the Trump situation and kind of going, "No, my wife deals with my legal matters. I've asked my wife to say, no, you can't use that song anymore." And then where that's relaxed is the YMCA is charted again in the Billboard charts in America because of all of this stuff. Like because of all the attention around Trump, YMCA has gone up in the charts again. It's like, now there's a financial thing to it. So now suddenly he's relaxed about the idea of Trump using it. And as you say, when it got to the Make America Great Again victory rally in January 2025 for the inauguration, village people perform at it. And you've got Victor Willis saying through his publicist, and I see it's a weird thing in interviews. He just keeps saying, "My wife will handle this. My wife will, send out legal letters." So sorry to Victor Willis and your wife if you're listening, and your publicist. We're not attracting anything. We're just going to read the statement, and the statement goes: There's been a lot of talk, especially of late, that YMCA is somehow a gay anthem. As I've said numerous times in the past, there was a false assumption based on the fact that my writing partner was gay, and some, not all of the Village people were gay, and that the first Village People album was totally about gay life. That end quote. Except for all of that. Start quote again. Quote again. However, I don't mind that the gays think of this song as their anthem. So, fast forward to the second Trump term. And we've got all of this, and you've got Trump going, it's the gay national... It is, usually like word salad way. His quote is like, it's the gay national anthem. Did you know that? Have you heard of this? The gays love it. It gets everybody up. And it's just another weird
he's talking about this as if it's like his insider knowledge. It's like, people say I'm homophobic, but have you heard of a little band called...
There's that old gag about the... when he would keep going, when he's trying to run against Obama and all that kind of thing, like in 2012, was the thing of him going, I have a great relationship with the blacks, to which Seth Meyers said in that White House Correspondents' Center that will, be looked back on as the point that fucking changed history, because it just made him decide, I'm definitely going to run for president. Seth Meyers said that joke, it's like, I think you're mistaken, unless the blacks are a family of white people who live next to you. But yeah, it's around the same time as Victor Willis is making his statement, London's first YMCA on Great Russell Street, which was opened in 1844. It was closed after 180 years by Criterion Capital, the property company who owned the site. And it's the closing of a community space, because all the innuendos aside, and I do believe, for all of its cultural standing, there is, it's not single entendres like the movie Can't Stop the Music, but, for all the double entendre of it being a great place to hook up with guys, it is associated with young men moving to cities for work when it originally opened, and then by the 70s moving to cities to get away from families, don't like them being gay or some other aspect of their personality. Closed down at the end of 2024 because community spaces are going to be on the shopping block under late stage capitalism. This stage that goes on forever because we're all too busy to have a violent revolution. I forgot this is going out in a few weeks. I shouldn't be saying things like that. But I know we're all very busy, but you can draw a line from disco sucks to young cis-het white guys being unable to get laid today and making it everyone else's problem. And closing community spaces like the YMCA is certainly a blob on the finger-painted, spunk-encrusted master plan for the right wing, isn't it? So that's where we're at.
I think that is such a beautiful dovetailing of two disparate eras in history that what I'm going to do is play some burial under it, and I'm going to tell everyone it's the new Adam Curtis documentary.
Oh, get away with it. I'll tell you what, and to bring it back to the subject, I didn't think there was anything that could eradicate the sort of generational appeal of YMCA more than Can't Stop the Music. Until Donald Trump got hold of it. That's what I'm saying with that.
Yes. I will say about Willis, I went into the research for this podcast expecting him to be the sort of Mike Love of the Village People, and I didn't get that. I think he's a more complex character than the mold he is being, I think, pushed into by history. He was bothered back in the late 70s when Jacques Morale came out because he didn't want to be pigeonholed as a gay band. In fairness, most of the gay members of the Village People also didn't want to be pigeonholed as a gay band because, the career prospects for such an act in 1970s and 90s America were pretty poor. And I think he is... he's not the Michael Love of the Village People so much as he is the Keir Starmer, desperately trying to play both sides of a cultural divide that, without realizing that one of them are violent psychopaths who want to murder him. He wants the Village People to be for everyone, and he is just tragically out of time in assuming that is a possibility now. But I will say, I did find out one fact about him that that does feel very predictive of where he would go. It's not just that he was a professional actor before he joined the Village People. I know some people have joked that, maybe when they cast him as the cop, he went method, and that's why he's a Trump supporter now. But
ACAB, and that includes the Village People.
But the Village People live album, Live and Sleazy, which was released obviously in the vinyl days, so it has two sides, and they are called Live and Sleazy. Victor Willis is the lead singer for the live album, and then he just vanishes for the sleazy side,
Yeah.
which is great.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that as I came to, yeah, I'm not lumping him in with the Trumpies or anything like that. I think what's clear from the more recent interviews is that he's seeing an opportunity for commercial exploitation of it, and that's fine. And it's not exploitation. You know, he's certainly been in court battles to get his share of the revenue from stuff. You know, there was a copyright case a few years ago that gave him, you know, sort of the rights that he was entitled to in YMCA and in the Navy. Yeah, but you know, there was the other quote that I missed out, and that is talking about performing at the rally, saying that their band of choice probably their candidate of choice probably would have been Kamala Harris. And they said if she'd won, though, but we wouldn't have been invited to play at the inauguration, she'd have gone for John Legend or Beyonce. So I'm not going to turn down playing the inauguration, which, you know, you didn't because you played the rally before it. But yeah, never mind. Okay, fine. It's yeah. I think that I think that it's certainly made it less cool with people of all sexualities, persuasions, and, you know, stripes in life. You know, yeah, it's on the way out after like nearly 50 years of YMCA being this sort of cultural touchstone that is. It's just a disco, you know, disco thing that has this dance that everyone can relate to, and everyone knows it. And everyone knows the intro within a couple of seconds. It'll fall out of style, I think, possibly in the years.
Yeah. I think that I would traditionally I would say that the way to like resist this and the way to keep that joy in your life would be to find some Village People deep cuts to replace it. But Can't Stop the Music has not persuaded me that there are many of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, to bring it back to Marvel again. It's going out in a few weeks. I think this is fine. It's not like you'll go see a band and at the end they'll just tear the front off the drum cover and it says the new Village People. Don't think that's an option. They're still about, still touring, as they say.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, speaking of still touring, Mark, can you give us an old style update on where people can catch you around the country?
Yeah, if you're at the Birmingham Hippodrome, no. If there's, yeah, few irons in the fire. We're doing stuff over on the Film Stories website. There'll be hopefully a new podcast project, and there'll be a bit closer to some information being out there about by the time this goes out. We'll see how we go with that. But yeah, just find me with Film Stories, writing nonsense about films and Marvel and the new Village People and all that kind of thing. That's currently where I'm at. And follow me on Blue Sky, markharrison.bsky.social.
I also have a big thing that I can't talk about yet. It's the sound of the summer, folks. People saying they can't tell you about the thing they want to tell you about. But you can find out as it first if you follow me on either Instagram at Graham W Films or on Letterboxd just by searching for Graham Williamson. You can also find more of my writing, not just at The Geek Show, but The Geek Show's Patreon, www.patreon.com/The Geek Show, where I do a review of the X-Files mythology arc every single week. And I'm also shepherding and contributing to our new project Outside the Blue Box, which looks at what the stars, writers, and directors of Doctor Who do outside the show. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with what I can only describe as a screeching U-turn. We're doing Parallel Worlds, Parallel Lives, a heartfelt documentary about the lead singer of veteran US indie band The Eels and his family's role in, well, we're back to Marvel, aren't we? His family's role in multiverse theory. So, yes, tune in.
But will it sell milk? But will it sell milk?
Yeah, it's not hot and sexy like a milk commercial is, but if you can if you can forgive us that, listeners, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with that. Until then, I've been Graham.
I've been Mark. Stop the music.
you.